I never thought a simple conversation could change the course of my life forever. My name is Liam, and at 22, I've always tried to balance the worlds I lived in. On the surface, I was just a regular guy, college student, part-time barista, loyal boyfriend to Lana. But beneath the ordinary exterior, there was a side of me I rarely let anyone see, a fascination with elegance, fashion, and the delicate art of presenting myself in ways society deemed feminine. It wasn't about shame or secret desire in the usual sense. It was an exploration, a way to feel freedom and expression in a world that often boxed me in. I'd experimented quietly in my apartment. The feel of silky blouses, the thrill of applying light makeup, the slight unsteadiness on heels that made me giggle nervously in front of the mirror. Lana knew some aspects of my playful side, the little quirks that made me unique, but she didn't know the full extent of my fascination with crossdressing. And, frankly, I had never planned to reveal it, until that day. It started innocently enough on a Saturday afternoon. The apartment smelled faintly of cinnamon from the candles Lana insisted on lighting, her voice humming a tune as she worked in the kitchen. I sat on the couch, scrolling through my phone, trying to ignore the flicker of curiosity in my chest. My father, a man of meticulous routines and high expectations, had called me that morning. His voice, unusually casual, suggested a visit. I didn't suspect what he had in mind. By the time he arrived, the sun was casting long shadows across the hardwood floor. Dad, impeccably dressed in his crisp shirt and tailored trousers, had that calm, authoritative presence he always carried. He greeted Lana warmly, but with that subtle undertone I recognized immediately, the tone that meant business. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything," he said, his eyes scanning the room with practiced precision. Lana smiled politely, but I could see the tension behind her polite nod. I knew this wasn't just a casual visit. Dad had always had ideas about shaping me into someone who met his exacting standards. He rarely spoke directly about my personal expression, but his expectations were clear. Academic success, social composure, and a certain kind of masculine decorum were non-negotiable. "Actually, I came to discuss something unusual," Dad said, settling into the chair opposite me. He leaned forward slightly, hands clasped. "Something that could be enlightening for you." I frowned, curiosity prickling. "Enlightening?" He nodded. "I know you've been exploring different sides of yourself. Different expressions, perhaps even a fascination with refinement in ways I wouldn't have expected from you." His eyes softened slightly, but the edge of control remained. "I want to make you an offer, a challenge, if you will. One that could help you understand yourself in ways you've never considered." My pulse quickened. I knew he had a plan, and the subtle power dynamic he wielded was always enough to make me both anxious and intrigued. "What kind of challenge?" I asked cautiously. He smiled, a mix of amusement and authority. "A bet, in a sense. For the next week, I want you to explore the more refined, delicate aspects of your personality. I want you to present yourself as someone entirely different, feminine, polished, and graceful. Consider it an experiment. You'll follow certain guidelines, and in return, you'll receive a reward. A significant reward." Lana gasped softly. "Liam, are you serious?" I felt my face heat, a mixture of embarrassment and curiosity. The idea was intoxicating. To embody a different version of myself under my father's gaze, to experience that thrill of transformation with rules and stakes, it was both terrifying and exhilarating. Dad continued, his tone measured, compelling. "It's not just about clothing. It's posture, speech, presence. You will become someone new, at least temporarily. And yes, there will be guidelines, attire, routines, and certain appearances you must maintain." I swallowed hard, the tension in my chest mingling with excitement. It wasn't simply about crossdressing, it was about performing, embodying, and exploring the boundaries of my identity under observation. The thrill of being seen, evaluated, and transformed sent a shiver down my spine. Lana bit her lip, concern and curiosity mixing. "Liam, do you want to do this?" I hesitated. The rational part of me screamed caution. This was my father, after all, with all his authority and power over my life. but a deeper, hidden part of me, excited, daring, and yearning for exploration, tugged me forward. I nodded slowly. Yes, I think I do. Dad's eyes gleamed. Excellent. Tomorrow morning we begin. I'll provide the instructions, and you'll follow them precisely. Remember, this isn't just about appearances. It's about discovery, yours and mine. As he left, Lana turned to me, her expression unreadable. Liam, I trust you know what you're getting into. I swallowed again, feeling a mix of fear, anticipation, and thrill. I had never considered that one conversation, one bet, could push me into a world of vulnerability and transformation so quickly. Yet, somewhere deep inside, I knew I was ready to explore the feminine side of myself, to embrace the challenge my father had laid out, and to discover how far I could push the boundaries of identity, desire, and personal expression. That night, I lay awake in bed, imagining the possibilities. The feel of silky fabrics, the soft brush of makeup on my skin, the teetering height of heels. I envisioned it all. My mind raced with anticipation, every fiber of me buzzing with the suspense of what tomorrow would bring. Little did I know, the journey my father had set me on would test me in ways I had never imagined, pushing me to the limits of secrecy, self-discovery, and the fragile balance between fear and excitement. The morning sun filtered through the blinds, casting long, sharp lines across my bedroom floor. My heart pounded as I remembered my father's instructions. Today wasn't just another day. It was the first step in a week-long experiment, a challenge designed to test my limits and explore the more feminine side of myself. The air was thick with anticipation, the kind that makes your skin tingle with a mixture of fear and excitement. I dressed slowly, following the first set of guidelines my father had provided: fitted blouse, soft pastel skirt, and simple flats that gave just enough elegance without the terror of heels. I paused at the mirror, taking in the reflection. My usual self, casual, confident in masculine clothes, was replaced by someone unfamiliar yet oddly captivating. The soft lines of the blouse, the gentle sway of the skirt, and the subtle brush of makeup I had practiced the night before made me feel delicate, poised, and strangely exposed. Standing there, I felt the first wave of internal conflict. Was I truly ready to embrace this persona in front of my father, knowing he would watch every movement, every expression? The shame of being seen in a way I had only dared to explore in private was heavy, but so was the thrill. My hands shook slightly as I applied the final touches of makeup, feeling the unfamiliar sensation of a brush on my skin, each stroke amplifying both excitement and vulnerability. I wondered how Lana would see me, not just today, but if this became a longer journey. Would she be supportive, amused, or horrified? I followed my father into the living room, where he observed me with a careful, almost clinical gaze. His voice was calm but authoritative. Walk as you would in public. Speak clearly. Gesture with poise. The words, simple as they were, carried the weight of judgment and expectation. I took slow steps across the room, feeling the sway of the skirt and the soft pressure of the flats against my feet. Each movement reminded me that I was no longer fully myself. I was performing a delicate balance between who I had always been and the persona my father demanded. As I moved, I felt the thrill of exposure, a sensation I had only ever experienced in private. Every glance, every gesture, every subtle expression became heightened. I noticed the way my blouse hugged my frame, the soft brush of makeup on my cheeks, and the slight unsteadiness that made me hyper-aware of every movement. It was exhilarating, yet terrifying. I realized that part of this experiment was about control, maintaining composure under scrutiny, balancing confidence and vulnerability in a way that felt almost impossible. Lana watched silently from the couch, her curiosity mingling with concern. "Liam, you look different," she said softly, her voice carrying a mixture of admiration and unease. I caught the slight catch in her throat, the hesitation that suggested she wasn't entirely sure how to react. Her presence added another layer of tension. I wanted her approval, yet I feared her judgment. The duality of performing for my father and being observed by Lana made every movement a test of poise, patience, and emotional control. By mid-morning, my father introduced the first challenge, interacting with a small group of family friends who were visiting unexpectedly. Maintain your persona, he instructed. Remember, the true test isn't just clothing, it's confidence, behavior, and grace. My pulse raced. I had never performed like this in front of anyone outside my safe private space. Each step toward the living room, where the guests chatted casually, felt like walking a tightrope. I greeted them, my voice steady despite the tremor I felt inside. Every compliment received felt like both validation and exposure. The way they smiled, unaware of the hidden struggle, heightened my awareness of how fragile my new identity could be under scrutiny. Halfway through the afternoon, a seemingly innocuous comment from one of the guests triggered a wave of self-consciousness. "Liam, you've really changed," they said, with genuine admiration. My stomach churned. Was this a compliment or a subtle critique? The ambiguity gnawed at me, forcing me to question my performance and my identity. For the first time, I felt the sharp edge of anxiety. Would I maintain composure, or would the tension unravel me? Throughout the day, I became acutely aware of every detail, the feel of fabric against my skin, the soft pressure of makeup, the unfamiliar sway of my skirt. Even small props, like a delicate hairpin or a carefully chosen accessory, became symbols of my transformation. Dropping the hairpin once sent a jolt of panic through me. It wasn't just a piece of metal, it was a tangible reminder of how exposed I was, and how easily the illusion could be shattered. As evening fell, the living room emptied and I returned to the privacy of my bedroom. I sank onto the bed, exhausted yet electrified. The day had pushed me further than I had imagined, emotionally, physically, and psychologically. I realized that this wasn't just a temporary experiment. It was a profound exploration of self, identity, and vulnerability. The challenge had begun, and I was hooked. Each sensation, each emotion, each tiny step in my feminine persona revealed parts of myself I had never dared to confront. Yet the suspense lingered. How long could I maintain this balance? How would Lana react over time? And most importantly, what would my father reveal as the stakes increased in the coming days? By the third day of my father's experiment, I had settled into a fragile rhythm. My morning routines, wardrobe choices, and delicate gestures had become familiar, yet the stakes felt higher with every passing hour. My reflection in the mirror seemed less like a costume and more like a second self, one that demanded attention, poise, and constant vigilance. Late in the afternoon, just as I adjusted my blouse and smoothed the skirt that had become almost second skin, there was a sudden knock on the door. My heart skipped. I wasn't expecting anyone. My father's instructions had stressed isolation to avoid exposure, and Lana was at work. I hesitated, clutching a small hand mirror as if it could shield me from the world. Peeking through the peephole, I froze. It was Mrs. Cartwright, the neighbor, a woman known for curiosity that bordered on invasive. "Liam? Is your father home?" she called cheerfully. Panic surged through me. If she saw me like this, fully transformed into my feminine persona, there was no recovering from the embarrassment. My mind raced for excuses, for ways to appear normal, to cover the skirt, the blouse, the delicate makeup that seemed to make my reflection glow back at me in eerie confirmation of my transformation. I forced a calm smile, my voice trembling slightly as I replied, "He's out for a while. Can I help you?" Mrs. Cartwright tilted her head, sensing something different, but unable to place it. "Oh, I just wanted to borrow some sugar." Her eyes flicked past me, landing momentarily on my reflection in the mirror. My pulse spiked. I felt completely exposed, my carefully constructed persona teetering on the brink. Every heartbeat echoed in my ears. I realized how thin the line was between secrecy and exposure. The excitement that had carried me through the first days of the challenge now mingled with sheer terror. Would one careless movement unravel everything? As I bent to retrieve a small tray for Mrs. Cartwright, a hairpin slipped from my carefully styled hair, clattering against the hardwood floor. The sound was deafening in my mind. My face flushed hot, panic threatening to overtake my composure. Mrs. Cartwright's eyes widened slightly, and I froze, gripping the tray like a shield. In that moment, the hairpin became more than just a small accessory. It was a symbol of my dual life, my fragile control, and the tension between who I was and who I was pretending to be. Before I could recover, the front door opened. My father stepped inside, perfectly timed, his gaze sweeping the room with that calm, commanding authority. "I see you've had a visitor," he remarked, almost casually. Relief and terror collided. His presence was both a shield and a judge's gavel. Mrs. Cartwright, sensing his authority, quickly muttered a polite excuse and left. But I could barely breathe. My father's eyes lingered on me, taking in the details, the blouse, the skirt, the subtle makeup, the hairpin that had fallen. "Excellent," he said finally, a slow smile forming. "You handled that remarkably well." In that moment, I realized how intoxicating this experiment had become. Every glance, every movement, every small success or slip was amplified. I was exhilarated by the secrecy, the duality, the vulnerability. But I was also terrified of what would happen if I failed. The thrill of being seen in my feminine persona under my father's watchful eyes now coexisted with a palpable fear of exposure. That evening, my father introduced a new challenge, an online video call with a distant relative who didn't know about the experiment. The task was simple in theory: maintain my persona, behave with grace, and avoid any slip that might reveal the truth. But as soon as the video call connected, a wave of anxiety washed over me. The relative was sharp-eyed, their expressions easily misinterpreted. Every small gesture, every intonation in my voice became a minefield. I caught myself fumbling with my hair, adjusting the blouse, smoothing the skirt, all subconscious movements that felt painfully exposed under the digital gaze. By the end of the call, I was trembling. My makeup had smudged slightly, my skirt had ridden up more than intended, and the hairpin had loosened again. But I had survived. Somehow, I had navigated the delicate balance between fear and performance, exposure and composure. The adrenaline was draining, leaving me simultaneously proud and utterly vulnerable. As I collapsed onto my bed that night, the weight of the week's transformations pressed down on me. I realized that this experiment was more than clothing, more than makeup, more than a temporary persona. It was a deep exploration of my identity, the fragile balance between masculinity and femininity, control and vulnerability, secrecy and exposure. And yet, I knew the most dangerous moment was yet to come. The longer I continued, the higher the stakes. One mistake, one slip, one moment of lost control could shatter everything I had built. The house was silent, the kind of quiet that presses against your chest and makes every creak of the floorboards feel amplified. I sat on my bed, skirt slightly wrinkled, blouse perfectly smoothed, hairpin still dangling precariously from my bun. My fingers traced the edges of the mirror, reluctant to face the reflection that had become both a thrill and a source of anxiety over the past few days. I could hear my father in the next room, moving with his usual quiet authority, completely unaware, or perhaps perfectly aware, of every tiny detail of my transformation. The adrenaline from today's challenges still pulsed through me, a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration that made me feel alive, yet completely vulnerable. Then came the sound I had been dreading, the key turning in the front door. Lana. She had returned early from work. My heart skipped a beat. All the careful composure I had maintained, every tiny gesture, every inch of poise, now seemed fragile, like a delicate house of cards threatening to collapse with a single misstep. I tried to adjust my posture, straighten the skirt, and smooth my hair in one fluid motion, but it felt clumsy, unnatural. I could hear her footsteps approaching, light yet unmistakably deliberate. The moment she stepped into my bedroom, my stomach tightened as if she could already see through the layers of clothing, makeup, and carefully curated gestures that separated my feminine persona from my usual self. Lana froze for a second, taking in my reflection with an expression I couldn't immediately read. Surprise, confusion, curiosity? Her eyes flicked from my blouse to the skirt, lingering on the subtle brush of makeup that highlighted my features. Liam, what? Her voice trembled slightly, caught between disbelief and fascination. I opened my mouth to respond, but words failed me. My mind raced for explanations, excuses, anything that could make sense of the surreal scene. Every second felt stretched, a suspended moment where one wrong word could shatter the illusion completely. My gaze fell on the hairpin that had slipped from my bun earlier, lying innocently on the floor. It seemed to mock me, a silent witness to my transformation, to the duality of who I was versus who I was performing. Reaching for it felt like a lifeline, yet even that small action carried weight. From the doorway, my father's presence was commanding yet calm. "I see Lana has returned," he said casually, but the tone carried a subtle weight. He didn't move forward, didn't intervene, but his eyes fixed on me, assessing every reaction. I realized then that this was the true test, maintaining composure, poise, and secrecy even when everything I valued was at risk of being exposed. Lana stepped closer, her expression softening yet remaining inscrutable. I don't know what to say, Liam." Her voice trembled. "You all look different. Beautiful, maybe, but I'm shocked."
Shock.
Admiration. Confusion. I couldn't tell which emotion weighed heavier. My pulse raced, the tension in the room unbearable. The silence stretched, each second feeling like an eternity. I knew one thing for certain. My secret was teetering on the edge of discovery. Any sudden movement, any slip of composure, and everything, my identity, my experiment, my father's challenge, could unravel. And yet, part of me didn't want to retreat, didn't want to shed the persona that had become intoxicatingly familiar, empowering, and terrifying all at once. I stood frozen, the skirt swaying slightly, hairpin dangling, heart hammering in my chest. Lana's eyes searched mine, trying to decode my emotions, my intentions, my reality. My father's calm gaze remained fixed, a silent reminder of the stakes. And then the unthinkable happened. Lana's hand reached toward the hairpin on the floor, poised to pick it up. Our eyes locked. My breath caught. Everything hung in the balance. One small action could reveal my dual life to the person I cared about most. The screen would cut to black here, leaving viewers on the edge of their seats. Did she pick it up? Did she discover the secret? How would Lana react? Would my father intervene?